Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. What is media? Does it play a central role in determining the direction of a country? Is it harmful for a country if their media shows negative sides of that country? If a country is constantly showed in a positive light, does it benefit the citizens of that country? According to a quote in journalism, which is often referred to by many experts, news is what the public needs to know, which someone somewhere, especially somebody in power, doesn't want you to know. That is news. The rest is all advertisement and propaganda. Showing negative news about a country often comes under a lot of attack. As India is going through one of its most challenging situations through COVID and through economic crisis, let us look at some of the most recent negative news that have come out of India, which have come under huge attacks, and what they mean for India's citizens. As India's COVID deaths started increasing to horrific numbers and crematoriums started overflowing, many journalists who were reporting from funeral grounds faced vicious trolling online. Barkha Dutt, a senior journalist who has been one of the most relentless reporters on COVID devastation, who reported from the ground and showed the worst of scenes, including numerous floating bodies in the river, numerous bodies filling the river banks like a carpet, was called a vulture waiting for her prey to die. Many refuted her ground reporting initially, saying that even before COVID, there were bodies on the riverbanks. However, she kept on showing evidence that the number of bodies were disproportionate and huge number of bodies were going uncounted to hide the full calamity of the COVID situation. These large number of floating bodies finally prompted the Bihar High Court in Patna to pull up the Bihar government on irregularities on death count. On the 10th of June, the Bihar government suddenly reported an additional 3,951 deaths. This moved India's total daily death rate to 6,148, which is the highest in any country. This reporting of the truth should perhaps have been done by many more media instead of ridiculing the handful who were doing the rightful job. In the beginning of 2020, Vinod Dua, a long-term senior journalist, had talked about the following ugly happenings in India in his YouTube video, which was also a direct criticism of the ruling party. One was the communal riots in Delhi that broke out in February 2020, in which shops, houses, and places of worship were burnt down and about 53 people were killed. He said that the government didn't do enough to stop it. And two, a nationwide lockdown that was called by the Prime Minister in a 4 hours notice in a completely unplanned way. This had forced poor migrant workers to walk thousands of kilometers on foot to get back home. An unknown number of these workers, possibly in thousands, died on the way by starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion. On the 20th of March 2020, the ruling BJP leader Ajay Sham filed a complaint against Vinod Dua based on his YouTube video under sedition, public nuisance, printing defamatory material, and public mischief. However, the Supreme Court granted him protection against arrest. After a year of harassment, on the 3rd of June 2021, the Supreme Court finally quashed all allegations against Vinod Dua. The Supreme Court recognized that it was Dua's right as a journalist to criticize and that he was not spreading false rumors and information. Dua was luckier than most because as a celebrated journalist, he had the luxury to file a plea in the Supreme Court. Most journalists from smaller towns do not have this ability. For the past 1 year, many journalists have been languishing in jail for reporting and criticizing on the same incidents. According to National Crimes Record Bureau, from 2016 to 2019, there has been a huge surge in slapping charges on sedition. Between 2016 to 2020, India's World Press Freedom Index dropped from 133 to 142. This year, US-based Freedom House reduced India's status from free democracy to partially free democracy. And the Swedish Institute VDEM downgraded India's status to electoral autocracy with a freedom of speech lesser than Nepal and Bangladesh. One argument that is often used in attacking a journalist's reporting is by saying, how about such and such facts of an opposing camp that you have not talked about? There's a term for this that has evolved over the years called whataboutery. Whataboutery is the act of defeating an opponent by accusing them of hypocrisy by bringing a completely different issue. This was a political tactic used by the Nazis in the 1930s. When the Nazis were accused of annexing territories in Europe, they countered it by saying that Britain and France have been doing it for centuries in Asia and Africa. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union justified their human rights violation in the same way. They argued that the deaths that they were bringing to their own citizens was okay because in the US, black people were being lynched every day. However, this is an invalid argument because the Nazis did not invade Poland as a protest against British occupation of India. The Soviets did not murder their own people as a reaction against racism. This is all just an excuse to do wrong. Also, criticizing a ruling party is not about making a supportive case for the opposition. It is about keeping the framework alive so that those in power do not get a free license to take harmful actions or feel encouraged to repeat it. So, as Barkhadat reported on the huge sea of dead bodies on the rivers of Bihar and UP, which are BJP held states, vicious attacks came on her asking what about Maharashtra and Rajasthan, which are opposition held states. If such scenes do exist in those places, more journalists should come on ground and show them, instead of trying to stop someone from showing the truth somewhere. This is equally true for a whole lot of other issues, where any criticism of the government is always attacked by blaming another incident by another leader of the world or somebody in the opposition. This is all just an attempt to create confusion so that the current questioning gets throttled. Let us also see instances where nobody was attacked, but a questioning should have happened, which did not happen, and what kind of disaster it led to. From the middle of February 2021, COVID cases had started rising in India. On the 26th of February, elections were declared in 4 states and a union territory. From this time on, huge crowded election rallies were conducted with no masks and social distancing for over 2 months. All through this time, the media never challenged political leaders on these obvious blunderous rallies, but kept on reporting in a frenzy about how such huge crowds meant that the Prime Minister's party is about to win. At the same time, hospitals were overflowing and had no place to admit people. Had the media relentlessly questioned at that time, it would have sent a different message to the people in India at that time. It could have also changed the course of action of these politicians, and this current disaster of COVID in India could have been avoided. On the 19th of February, in a grand event, an Ayurvedic tablet called Coronil was publicized as the first evidence-based drug against COVID-19 in the presence of India's Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan. This was wrong on many counts. Firstly, Dr. Harshvardhan, being a doctor, is bound by a moral code of conduct not to promote any drug. Secondly, this was an unscientific medicine which had no proven benefits against COVID. The maker of Coronil, Ramdev, claimed in the presence of the health minister that it had fully gone through scientific trials that have been published in journals. According to BBC, they specifically referred to the Swedish-based journal MDPI. There, it was found that the tablet had only gone through lab trials conducted on fish, and there was no evidence that it worked on humans to cure COVID. Yet, The health minister of India was not questioned by the media for such a completely false and dangerous message to the people. Such message create vaccine hesitancy and also falsely make people believe that they are protected against COVID when they are not. And this creates a dire consequence. On the 24th of March 2020, the Prime Minister of India declared a nationwide lockdown for all its 1.3 billion people within a short notice of 4 hours. At that time, India had only 500 COVID cases. But by this action, immediately millions of India's daily laborers were rendered jobless. Overnight, these workers had to walk with their babies, old parents, and whole family for thousands of miles on foot with lack of food and lack of water. Thousands of them died on the way, not from COVID, but by starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion because of this unplanned step taken by the government. The COVID cases also started increasing because it was actually creating more crowd gathering. There were images where a toddler's mother died in front of him and the toddler was desperately trying to wake her up. Most of the media made a supportive case for the government, arguing that these are trying times and no one should blame the decision of a lockdown. However, the obvious question was not asked as to why the lockdown was called with no planning and within a surprise of 4 hours' notice. This had caused the death and sufferings of so many people and also the spread of COVID. An impactful piece of journalism has changed the course of the world many times. Impact or showing negative stories is not a dirty word as long as it doesn't cross the lines of ethics. For example, showing the masses of death was important. However, the journalist should not shove the microphone in the grieving families' faces just to get a sensational reaction or show unnecessary gory details. Let us take a look at some of the examples from around the world where journalists in a country have criticized their own government and changed the country in a better direction. In September 1955, a 14-year-old African American boy, Emmett Till, was horrifically lynched by a couple of white men in Mississippi over an allegation that he offended a white woman. None of the mainstream media wanted to publish the photo of Till's body because it was so badly disfigured. African American magazine Jet was the first publication initially to run the photo. The photo sparked a national conversation against racism, and it inspired America's civil rights movements that followed. Another example is one photo taken by a Vietnamese journalist of fleeing children during the Vietnamese War. The photo was very offensive, but it became a rallying point. It created a furor among people within the US who started questioning their own government on the reason for this war and the harm that it is causing to citizens of another country. In the same year, America's involvement in the war ended. Both the presence and absence of media can significantly impact a huge number of people's lives. If we look at autocracies, the news that come out of them is always of great things happening in that country. For example, North Korea, China, or Germany under the Nazi rule. If it is a thriving democracy, the news that comes out of it is always about criticism, how things are faring badly, how much better things could be, etc. These negative news do not necessarily indicate that the country is destroyed. It indicates that there is a freedom of criticizing the ruling government. It is a separate debate if those opinions are right or wrong. Freely showing criticisms of a government indicates that the country is actually in a great place. It indicates that a healthy discourse exists in the country which allows opinions for improvement. Do let me know what you thought of this episode with any comment suggestions that come into your mind because every little bit of it is very valuable for me. I want to say a huge thank you to all my viewers who have stayed with me and a huge thank you to so many of you who have subscribed after my last episode and commented on it. And to all new viewers, welcome to this channel. I really look forward to all of you being involved in this as if it is your own channel. Please do keep on commenting and suggesting all the time. And of course, please do like, follow and subscribe.